You're listening to Mukhtar. In the studio today, I'm joined by Brother Hamza as well as Brother Muxin. We are broadcasting live from the Durban Summer Souk. So if you are in the area, please do feel free to pop by. Just to let everybody know out there, our WhatsApp line is open. Should anybody have any WhatsApp questions, queries, or comments that they'd like to send through to us, the number you can get us on is 060-904-1056. Let me repeat, 060-904-1056. So, but still, a lot of people out there ask the question, what are the right things to do during silly season and wrong things to do during silly season? So I've got two brothers in studio with me today who are going to give us the bad examples of what they have done during silly season. And we'll maybe add on a few, pieces of more information onto that as well. So I'd like to call upon Brother Muxin, who will tell us about all of the things that he has done during silly season whilst in active addiction. Inshallah, from there we'll carry on.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Yeah, our silly season topic goes on this is such an important topic because I don't think we can ever have enough of the information that we are giving, especially in this time. And, for me as a recovery going on for some years now, this is, I think, my ninth silly season that I've not been involved in the stuff that I was usually involved in. But just a little rundown of what we used to do, myself, what I used to do during the city season is that I'll always have the whole year planning out the December and the January time to such an extent whereby I'd be saving money, I'd be making plans, I'd have things written down for, the things that I want to do. And I'd also have, for events and stuff, we book our tickets early and we make sure we get early bird tickets and all of these things to make sure that I have a good city season basically. And in that whole entire hubbub of, getting, having a fun, silly season, I'll completely forget about my family. There wouldn't be any time for family, be it your mom, your dad, your brothers, cousins, the New Year's Eve braais that we usually have, and the not really Christmas, but like Boxing Day times that we usually have with our family. It's never done with family. It's always with our friends. And during the time that we would be with our friends, the most important thing, the most important factor of our outings would be making sure that we have the substance that we choose to, our substance of our choice, basically drugs. And I'd find that, the entire outing would be centered around the drug that we would have. And without the drug, be it cocaine or ecstasy, depending on what the plan for the night is, there wouldn't be any fun in the night. And we'd feel dejected. We'd actually just want to go home. And you can see just by that it's not a correct mindset. It's not a normal mindset that we have because we look around now, there's many families around us, and I doubt that anyone is high on cocaine, but I don't know, and try here just to enjoy themselves while being goofed. Whereas us, I would never be out in the silly season or in any other days without being, high in some sort of way. So the first thing was there was no family time. The second thing was all of my outings were with my friends and it would be centered solely around drugs. And the other thing is that the planning of the silly season around this time throughout the year would be like so stringent, and I'd make sure like if I put the same amount of planning in my life or if I put the same amount of planning in my studies or my family time, I think I'd be much more successful. And we actually spoke about it this week at our support group program. We spoke about focus, and if our focus was even, I'd say, an eighth, a quarter, or an eighth on the correct things, if our inclination is towards the correct things, and now I'm talking about the silly season, especially in the silly season time, I think I would have created much more memories, had a much more fulfilling time, had much more contentment, whereas opposed to being out and about, always worried about blue lights, always worried about getting a drug, always worried about getting money. And it's always been, the inclination has always been towards the wrong things. So that was what I used to do during the silly season, but largely throughout the year, but more concentrated toward in the silly season time.
Our listeners may be wondering why so much of a focus on silly season. And if you look at the silly season, the actual definition of it, the silly season typically means the holiday period. It can be a very challenging time for any person in recovery due to social gatherings, heightened emotions, and potential exposure to triggers. Now, before we came on air, we were just talking about this while on the sofa. And everything starts off as examinations come to an end, as companies start to close, for the year and so on. And it now is the time where it actually starts to become a bit of a peak. And you will find that this is the time now where whoever's been experimenting and doing all of the wrong things, they were riding the wave. And now you're getting to the actual crest of that wave, and it all crashing down towards the end of, middle to end of January.
Yeah.
And this is the time that we actually start to see a lot of either relapse cases or new cases, or just sometimes people that are just like, once off but completely off the rail.
You'd find that with a lot of the addicts throughout the year, or our recoveries throughout the year, as you said, yes, riding the wave, doing everything correctly. But then we get that, I'm speaking from experience, you get that feeling of FOMO. In our program, I spoke about, are you really not inclined towards these kind of things? Or are you just not doing it because now you got someone on your back? And with regards to me, that fear of missing out was always there. And I actually mentioned that in my first year or two of being clean, I'd actually be jealous of the people that could still, for lack of better words, catch a jewel. Whereas now I have to be answerable for all of my actions. There's consequences if I do the wrong things. And that's why I think that a lot of the time people are actually, like the people who are not doing the recovery in the correct way that we teach them to, they're biding their time, And the moment that loophole comes about, that opportunity comes about, then we actually see that so-called mask falling down, and they actually do what they want to do, and that is the drug. And that's why it's so important in our support group programs to be honest. And we always find that when a person is honest, regardless of what they have done, they came over there knowing that now they need the help, and they're honest about it. There's no airs about them. There's just complete transparency. It's easier to help that person. And that's why sometimes, in our silly season time, we see these people falling down, and it's much more upsetting because the whole year we've been asking them, like, what's going on? And they don't tell you, or they just brush things off. And then we actually see what's happening. And that's why silly season is named as such for us, especially in R.A.U.F.
And just one more thing before we call upon Brother Hamza to give us his examples of what he had done in his active addiction. You said that a lot of the time people in active addiction don't want to spend time with their families, and they want to be with their friends and plan for the next party and so on and so forth. And if you really, really break it down, it's more because the mindset of an addict is one of selfishness.
100%.
It's only, how can I have the best time? How can I get the best drugs? How can I do this? How can I do that? Whereas when you find a person that's in recovery or a person that's not an addict, you'll find that this person is more centered around the fact that, what can I do to spend some more time with my family? How can I make my family's holiday a bit better than the normal part of the year? And that's how a normal person is supposed to behave. And inshallah, at this second part of the program, we'll go on to the things that we are supposed to be doing during the silly season. But for now, I'd like to call upon Brother Hamza, who will give us a bit of what he used to do whilst in active addiction. And the things that we shouldn't do.
Assalamu alaikum. Much like Brother Muksin has said, when it comes to the silly season and how I would spend it in the past prior to recovery, the thing with this time of the year is there's so much pressure, and there's so much self-imposed pressure for this time of the year to be spent in the best possible way ever. And when I say best possible way, I'm talking about what our idea of fun was at that time. Much like Brother Muksin said, the entire of the year is spent almost biding your time, waiting to go all out for this December period. And I think part of the reason is through introspecting about this time of the year is that you almost feel like there's a sense of lawlessness, like the laws at least for the December period don't exist. Your principles and your morals, even for a person who's not an addict, this time of the year, it's pushed aside.
Yeah.
You can live recklessly. It's only for 1 month. That's what you tell yourself, and that's the vibe that you get. And that vibe, like we were discussing in the weeks before, it's just getting more and more profound. You know that there's a feeling of you. There's no responsibility. There's no. It's all about me. It's all about this hedonistic approach to spending this time of the year. It's all about self pleasure, like you said. It's selfishness. So in the past, it was all about having, like I said, the best possible time. And of course, my inclination at the time was parties. It was going to this one's house and that one's house. Like I keep saying every week, it's you want to be seen, and you wanna go to the best of places, and you want to be seen at the best of places. And all sorts of experimentation happen in this time of the year. Drugs that I previously, or substances that I previously never consumed, I tried it for the first time during this period. And unfortunately, whatever I experimented with carried over for the next year.
Yeah.
So when people talk about New Year's resolutions, they want to get fit, they want to lose weight, they want to kick certain habits. Unfortunately, for an addict or an upcoming addict, this is the time of the year where you build upon more and more bad habits. So your New Year's resolution, whether you knew it or not, was to become addicted to more and more substances. So it's funny, and it's quite shameful and sad at the same time, the lives we lived, and essentially the time we've wasted in living the lives we lived.
You used a very nice word, hedonistic. And if I think about, the times that I spent in addiction, and I was actually sitting and thinking about this, and I was thinking about what I would have been thinking about in that time. And there was no thoughts in my mind. It was just basically physical action, self-pleasure, just searching for the best possible chemical feeling that I could get. It was no thinking about those around me, those that are related to me. And to a certain extent, it was thinking about myself, but also not thinking about the harmful effects. So this was the time where we would find ourselves doing the most dangerous things, be it crime-wise, be it mixing up things. I mean, I've seen people take substances in this period for the first time and fall down dead in front of me. And what did I do? Walked around and carried on, because I had absolutely no care, no feeling for anyone but me, and to a certain extent, no regard for my health at all. So this is another thing that we also have to not do. And when you see, when we have that hedonistic approach, and when we have this, I work, this mentality where I worked so hard for 11 months, and in the 12th month is going to be my holiday, we find that, we run out of money very quickly. And this is when we also find that crime starts spiking. Not only when we start stealing from people, or scamming and all of those things, but it's also a time where you start finding yourself driving under the influence much more, or you find yourself with the opposite gender getting involved in those kind of things much more. And it's all, in my experience, it's all centered around that hedonistic approach and that mindset that we had in order to get that drug. And furthermore, when we were on that drug, how chaotic it was. And that's basically, if you look up the definition of the silly season, it's a season of chaos. That's what it is.
So those were the examples of two brothers that have lived a life of addiction during the silly season, and a few examples as to what they had done during that time. A few maybe tips for those people listening out there that maybe want to write this down or just paying attention. Something else that you should not do during silly season is don't assume that you will be fine without preparation. They say triggers can sneak up very, very unexpectedly. And sometimes, I think it was Brother Hamza that made this statement a few weeks back. He said sometimes when you're walking, your trigger could actually be any one of your senses. You don't have to actually be in the company of a person that's doing something in order for you to actually do something. You could be walking down the road and get the smell of something that somebody is smoking, and that could trigger you. You could be walking down the road and you could see somebody selling something which could trigger you, or you could feel something which could trigger you, or you could hear something which could trigger you. And these are the things that we need to be very, very careful about, because who knows when their next trigger is going to trigger them.
Speaking about triggers, Brother Mukhtar, as much as it's so dangerous for a person in recovery trying to abstain and stay the rest of their life away from drugs, what we're seeing more of now is that the fact that for people who have never used drugs, these triggers as much as they are dangerous for recovery, they can trigger interest in people who have never used drugs, especially amongst the youth. So for the same thought process that happens for recovery when you may smell a drug, where it may trigger temptation, for a person who's never used but is curious, it may trigger an interest. They may find themselves taking a short left and trying to pursue where that smell's coming from, trying to fit into this circle, introduce themselves. So as much as we are giving awareness to recoveries, it is also the first time users that we are trying to get the message across. Triggers are equally as dangerous for them as they are for us.
And we find a lot of that in these pen down parties. Kids, basically kids, grade 11, grade 12, who are now, finished with their exams, and they decide, all right, now, like a bird out of a cage, let out free. And this is when you start piquing their interest. And the sad thing is that these little interests or these little experimentations can lead to a lifetime of disaster. And those plans of going to study engineering, law, medicine, whatever it is, for the next year become secondary. And it's funny, and not funny, it's actually sad how quickly your education, your family time, your personal health can take a second step to the drugs that you now are curious about or have begun experimenting. Because in our program we also know that, like, from experimentation it becomes a social thing, then a regular thing, then a full-blown addiction. It's all a process, and it's scary as to how quick that process can happen within the space of 2 weeks, not even 2 weeks maybe. Because addiction on substances like crack cocaine, after one time you're addicted. You know what I mean? Children are born addicted to it. So it's such a scary thing because it can happen so quickly. And the most important thing for the parents is that we must never think that it will never happen to our child, because we don't know where our children are and if they are telling us the truth as to where they are. That's why in our do's, so-called do's section after the break, we'll actually cover some of those things that we as parents and as recoveries should be doing.
And I'm glad you brought up the thing about people that haven't used before, seeing triggers that may ask or force them or entice them into the world of experimentation. Because I was just thinking about this now, right? As you're speaking, if you walk into a convenience store, as an example, and if you want to drink an energy drink, as an example, right, you would find that next door to all of your energy drinks, your popular brands, you'll find a CBD-based energy drink there.
Yes.
I made this statement in our program not too long ago as well. I was once at a fair, won't mention any names. I was visiting a stall, not mentioning any names as well. But whilst I was there, if I hadn't checked properly what was on the table, I would have probably purchased something that had CBD in it. And this would now have become a problem because it's so openly available to everybody else. And if you look at the world that we're living in today, as Brother Hamza had mentioned, it's hedonistic. It's actually come to a point where normal people have to now behave abnormal to actually be normal. Yeah. And the normal people that think that they are normal are actually abnormal, because everything that they're doing that is normal is not supposed to be done. Yeah. So if you look at a person that's in recovery, they are the examples of the people that we are supposed to be following. I was thinking about this thing last week before we stopped for the ad break. A lady sent us a message that said drug addicts are not trustworthy, are deal breakers actually. She said drug addicts are deal breakers. But now my question to you is, if you feel that your child or your loved one is not a drug addict, but occasionally smoking cannabis, for example, because that is seen to be as the lightest, mildest, smallest form of drug, socially acceptable drug as well. If this person is high and they crash the car with you in the car, is that not a deal breaker? If you are allowing a child or a parent to smoke cannabis for whatever reason it may be, do you as the parent or the caregiver have now the right to stop that child from doing what you are actually doing? So are we leading that type of a life? And if you look at this from a point of drug addicts are deal breakers, how do you know that your doctor is not high while doing an operation on you? Because I can tell you from a matter of fact that we have had pediatricians in the center. We've had doctors in the center. We've had lawyers in the center.
We had a surgeon.
We've had surgeons in the center.
It's the funny thing. Most of those people, and I don't mean to be condescending, were getting high on their own supply. That's a scary thing.
And the reason we say this is because there's a lot of stigma attached to those people that are looking for recovery. but there's no stigma attached to those people that are actively using, which I think is where we as a community need to actually buck up and say, listen, you're a drug addict. I'm now going to stand with you for as long as you're looking for recovery and not throw you away the minute you walk into a rehab. We're going to stop for a quick ad break. When we get back, inshallah, we will continue with what you should be doing during the silly season and say, listen, you're a drug addict. I'm now going to stand with you for as long as you're looking for recovery and not throw you away the minute you walk into a rehab. We're going to stop for a quick ad break. When we get back, inshallah, we will continue with what you should be doing during the silly season. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to the R.A.U.F show. You're listening to Mukhtar, and in studio today I'm joined by Brother Hamza as well as Brother Muhsin. We are broadcasting live from the Durban Summer Souk, so if you are in the area, please stop by. Our WhatsApp line is open. Should anybody have any questions, queries or comments, you can feel free to contact us via WhatsApp. The number is 060-904-1056. Let me repeat, 060-904-1056. So our topic today is based on the do's and don'ts during silly season in the life of a recovering addict or a person that's now looking to experiment with drugs a bit, right? And in the first half of the show, we had examples of our two brothers that had lived the life of addiction through a silly season, and they gave us a few examples of what they had actually done during silly season. And also, we made a mention of the fact that don't go to a place where you could get a trigger. So don't go into a place without having a plan. You need to have a plan in place when you go somewhere. And this is something that we're going to discuss now in the next part of our show. So I'd like to maybe call upon Brother Hamza to tell us a few of the examples of things that he now has implemented in his life, now that he's found recovery, and now that this is not his first silly season as well. Brother Hamza?
Assalamu alaikum. Look, firstly, I'll say it starts from the very beginning. It starts with your intention, and I'll explain why I say that. If your intent when you stepped upon this journey, and yes, for some people, like myself included, in the beginning, I was resistant to this program. I was resistant to change in general. But after being coming in the program and understanding and introspecting about my life and really seeing the damage that I've done to myself and my family, there comes a sincerity towards the path that you are now walking on. And with that sincerity, you start to value your recovery. When you value your recovery, you are going to put measures in place to ensure that you preserve your recovery. And yes, no one's perfect. You may falter here and there, but you always have to bring yourself back, or you have your support structure to observe you falling short and bring you back in line. So the reason why I say that is because if you are planning, and Brother Mukhtar is asking the question, what precautions do you take when going somewhere, especially when it might be questionable? If you are going somewhere that's questionable as a recovery, if you value your recovery, you are going to do some research on where you're going. And when I say that, I don't mean very intense. All you got to know is where you're going, what area is it, who is going to be there, understand the situation that you're going to find yourself in. And as far as possible, try to limit the amount of surprises that you're going to encounter. You don't want surprises in the forms of temptations for recovery, because you don't want that in your life. Whether you feel you're strong enough to handle that, we avoid them rather than facing them head on. Why face a situation when you can avoid it in that sense? I don't mean it in general. So yes, plan ahead, meaning understand where you're going, the situation, the type of people. What are those people? Are they on the straight path, so to say, or do they also do their bad things, behind closed doors? And the more you understand the situation, you may come to a decision where I'm not going. You may tell yourself, okay, after understanding who's going to be there, where I am, what are we going to be doing, I don't really want to go. And that decision to not want to go comes from a place of sincerity. It comes from a place of valuing your recovery. On the other hand, you may do your research, you may find out what's happening there, who's going to be there, and you may say, okay, it's fine. I can go, I just need to make sure A, B, and C is in place. And that way, you are one up, so to say. You are one up for the situation. There's no surprises. There's no hidden mysteries involved that can, we're speaking about triggers before the ad break. You're limiting the amount of triggers because you understand the environment, the situation. That's what it's all about. Situational awareness and awareness of yourself, self-awareness.
Just listening to what you're saying, if I could just maybe add on there as well. Sometimes when we go to these functions or these events or, gatherings, or whatever it may be, it's also nice to not go alone.
Yeah.
Go with a person that understands your situation. Go with the person that is there that's going to assist you in the event of something triggering you. and a person that's actually going to have you or have your back to actually get you out in the event of that situation becoming messy. I'd like to call upon Brother Muhsin to give us a bit of his examples, inshallah.
Just on what you guys were speaking about, especially when it comes to certain destinations or events, be it family or be it a work gathering or whatever it is, you also shouldn't be afraid to say no, that you can't make it, because obviously you have to take your well-being and your family's well-being into consideration first. That is the priority. So if you can't make it for a certain thing, then you just have to be straight up and say, you know what, I don't think I can make it, and maybe I'll catch you another time. So we should also not feel bad about preserving ourselves and our recovery, because by doing that, we're actually preserving our family life, we're preserving our health, we're preserving our mental state. So sometimes saying no to certain things, while socially it might be a bit of a no-no, but in the interest of preservation and family preservation, I think it's acceptable. But that's more of the where. Now the who is also a very important thing. In our program, we learned that the most important people to us is actually our family, because at those programs on those Fridays, we don't find any of our friends that we in the past used to be with. We would always be supported by our family. So now, in recovery, it's up to us basically to make that choice, that friends, they come and go like the wind. Whether times are good, then you'll find that you have a lot of friends. Times are bad, not always, they're not always going to be present, but your family is always there for you. And look, I'm talking very generally, and I'm also talking from a point of experience, in my point of view, my life, whereby I would now much rather spend the time with my family. I would much rather go out to the beach or to a mall with my wife, my child, my mother, my brothers. So it's not so much of a friends thing. And you find that whenever you chase your friends, there's always going to be some sort of disappointment, or they can't basically do what you want to do, or they will be with other people. Whereas family, if you plan things correctly, you find that you'll have a much more fulfilling time. You'll create memories. I joke about it all the time, saying that when I was in addiction, I'd always say the best memories are those that you can't remember. So yeah, so creating memories, having that sense of contentment and fulfillment is more prevalent when you do these things with your family, because those are memories created.
Just before Brother Hamza says what he has to say, for anyone that does hear any background noise, we do apologize. We are broadcasting live from the Durban Summer Souk, so there are announcements that are being given as well whilst we are on air. Brother Hamza?
Assalamu alaikum, ma, for that. Just on, like I was saying, just on the point of what Brother Muhsin was saying, it's a very much what he was saying reminds me of one of our topics, which is your inclination, changing your inclination. So from valuing those around us to be our friends and playmates, we have to switch our inclination to now value those around us as our family and loved ones. That's what it is. So our inclination from a social aspect also needs to change. Who do we value around us? Because previously we valued the people who just further enabled our wrongdoing, and we further enabled them, and it was a completely toxic and destructive relationship that we all shared. But now with our inclinations changed, the people we surround ourselves with aid in our progression, aid in constructive, healthy fun. That's what it's all about. So it's about switching from the negative inclinations to the positive. And that includes what Brother Muhsin was mentioning, which is the social aspect of our lives.
And also in our program, one of our foundation, one of our roots is loving the things you hate and hating the things you love. And you'll find that that goes hand in hand with your inclination. It's very easy basically for you to love the wrong things, and that's the kind of life that we are coming from. We love our friends, we love drugs, we love music, we love these crowded party places, but we'll never ever appreciate your family. You'll never appreciate a peaceful afternoon on the beach. You would never appreciate, just serenity and calmness. It's always like, you always want to be in a rush. So in our program, we find that, working on our inclination, working on our mindset, and starting to love the things that we used to hate and hating the things that we used to love is something that's very, very important for the foundation of a person that's now trying to change from an addict to a recovery, and then as time goes on to a fully functioning normal human being in society again, but with the correct mindset.
You know, if I can just say something, what you're saying, Brother Muxin, you're reminding me of something that happened recently. So I was in Joburg a few weeks ago, and I've realized now, especially with this last visit, so when I go and see my nephews and nieces, from being a person that obviously they were much younger when I was in addiction, but from being a person that had very little interest in the small ones in the family, very little interest in playing with them and showing them love and attention, to now when I arrive at their house, they know we're going outside. Hair mama, they call me hair mama. Hair mama is going to do something fun. We're going to jump on the trampoline. We're going to play hide and seek. That is what I've become known for in their eyes, and that's a complete change from what I would be seen as by them had I not entered this path of
As
recovery.
opposed to in the past where you either would be not even there, or like, whenever, like, this uncle is going to be there, there's going to be some sort of drama. Now that's where the contentment and the fulfillment and those memories start coming in, because clean fun is so much more fun. Because again, and I'll go back to what I said earlier, you can actually remember them. Yesterday we were sitting, my wife and I, and we had just taken our kid out, our baby out into the pool, and we obviously videoed that time, and she told me something. She said this is a core memory. So I asked her, what is a core memory? She said something that you look back on years later, and you feel so emotional about it because it actually means something. Now I can ask you, Hamza, how many of the memories, so-called memories from the past in addiction, can you actually say mean something to you now?
Absolutely. From a point of even remembering them, that the answer is very little. And then to answer your question, to the ones that mean something, even less. In fact, if there's any at all, that I certainly can't remember them.
For me, it's all the bad ones in the back of the police truck or van, or stranded without any money. It's all the terrible ones. Whereas now, shukr alhamdulillah, 9 years later, R.A.U.F and first of all, our creator, R.A.U.F, our parents, those that supported us, have cultivated goodness for us, and then allowed us to now cultivate that for ourselves. So at first they held our hands. They never throw us away. And now, shukr alhamdulillah, after the years go, we can become assets to society instead of delinquents and menaces.
I'm just listening to you guys giving us your examples and your life. And the reason that the only memories you have are those memories in the back of a police van and so on is because when a person is using substance, now remember, I'm not saying a drug addict. When a person is using a substance, that person has no inhibitions. So taking a risk is not a major issue to them. So coming home to your family in a state of whatever the state may be is not a problem to that person. And we always tend to assume that a drug addict will always be a man. But we don't realize that drug addicts are also female, and drug addicts are also young children, and drug addicts are also old people. So we need to keep that in the back of our mind when we assume or we put a tag onto a person who we think is a drug addict. But with that being said, just be coming to the end of the show as now. A few tips as to what you can do for our listeners out there during the silly season is one, as Brother Hamza mentioned, plan ahead. Know where you're going, know who you're going with, know what you're going to be doing, know what the situation is going to be. Now, I'm speaking to the person that's actually going. But what about those people that are allowing their children to go? Do you know who they're with? Do you know what they're doing? Do you know why they're going there? Do you know what they're spending their money on? Because if you don't, then you should know, right? Another one is setting boundaries. So being able to politely decline an invitation that you know is going to put you into a situation is not a bad thing. It actually shows that you may have good willpower. Another tip is staying connected. Over the last couple of weeks at our support group program, we've noticed that the numbers have dropped quite a bit.
Yeah, drastically.
And we'll find that sometimes people assume or people have this impression that during the festive season, you can go on holiday from recovery as well. And they place themselves into a scenario where they could potentially be at risk of a relapse because they may not necessarily know how to handle the situation in the event of a trigger event. So these people need to stay connected to, or any person that wants recovery needs to stay connected to their support group program. Brother Hamza?
I like that you mentioned that, Brother Muxin. There's a very simple analogy that we use in the program. If you look at recovery in the form of like a battery, you never want your battery percentage to drop to below 30%, let's say. And that goes for in real life as well. You don't want your phone battery to be too low, because if you are in a situation where there's no charger, you need to have enough battery to run you till you get to the next charger. The same thing with our weekly program. You never want your battery to go below 30%. And as long as you come every Friday or once a week, wherever in South Africa you are for your program, it is recharging your battery to full capacity. So what happens if you find yourself in an emergency situation, a justified situation where you can't attend the program, you at least have 30% of battery to last you till the next time you attend a support group. But when you go on a holiday and you don't make plans, like we said, planning ahead for a recovery includes scheduling, okay, where I'm going to be close to a support group program. Just go in 1.5, 2 hours, boost your battery, as you're saying.
And sometimes people might find or might be frustrated or think that this is like, an inconvenience. I'd like you to go back, especially for those people who have a problem or who are in recovery. Go back and really think about it. How can this be an inconvenience? Because what life would you have had if you were not in recovery in the first place? You'd either be dead, you'd be in a mental institute, or you'll be in jail. So that's why we thank our creator, we thank our organization and those that looked after us in that initial period for saving us from those kind of things, and why we take it so much more seriously. Like for me, a lot of times it's non-negotiable. Whether it's in your holiday time, whether it's in a busy period, sometimes yes, work, but you'll always have that kind of connectivity with the people that know more than you. And you have to be humble enough, and you have to have your priorities in check to a certain extent to say, well, okay, right now I need a recharge, as you just said. So it's very, very important for those that are in recovery and those that need to learn about their potential drug addicts to be at any program for that matter.
No, I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's one of the things that we should be doing as recovering addicts or any person that's looking for recovery from any substance. Gratitude, gratefulness, because we don't understand. I mean, you mentioned this not too long ago, Brother Muxin, where when we were in active addiction, we had all the friends in the world. I mean, if you look at any social gathering, you will find a group of males or a group of females all standing together because they are the best of friends. Nowadays the youth say, you might ride or die.
Yeah.
Not realizing that you're only riding. When the time goes difficult, when the person is in jail or the person getting locked up or the person is now in the rehab, there's no ride there. You die on your own. That's how it is. And you made the statement not too long ago as well. You said that, in recovery, there's nobody there with you, but the people that you thought were your enemies.
100%.
Now, every person who's in active addiction today cannot tell me that at one point in their active addiction, they didn't find that their parent was an inconvenience to them or their caregiver was an inconvenience to them, purely because that caregiver or that loved one wanted that person to stop their habits, right? And when that person now finds recovery and that person is now understanding what they've done, they'll see that all those friends that they thought they had are nowhere to be seen. So this comes back to another point as well. If you are going to a social gathering, or if you're going to a family function or a work function, go with a person who knows how to ensure that you don't fall prey to a trigger that may be there waiting for you. And how do you now find the person that knows how to handle that situation? The only person that knows how to handle that situation is a person who is enlightened by the program to understand that this is a problem situation. We need to leave here ASAP. Or you are now starting to think in a manner which is not suitable for recovery. We now need to leave here as soon as possible. So what this means is that every person should be around by a person that is enlightened and empowered by the recovery or the program that they are attending, to ensure that there are no mistakes and there are no traps hidden down the road. We've come to the end of our program right now, and I'd like to maybe just put this out there. Whoever is around the souk or the Durban Summer Souk, whoever is listening to us on radio, if you are a teacher, SGB member, principal, you are more than welcome to contact us, and we in the new year, and we will definitely be able to do a awareness at your school or at your place of employment, and this is free of charge. and this is a bit of maybe advertising for R.A.U.F as well. All of the things that we do comes at a cost of zero to a person who can't afford it. So if you look at the cost of what this means, the cost of 6,000 rand per person is carried by R.A.U.F, and this money is created by either self-sustainable, efforts, or our well-wishers and our donors. So please do feel free to contact us, make use of our services wherever possible, and inshallah we will help fight the scourge of drug addiction and drug use. And for our youngsters out there as well, you think that your parents are talking nonsense when they speak to you, understand that what they're saying is coming from a place of love. And nobody that loves you will want to see you go down the wrong path. And remember, every single one of your ride or dies, ask them where they will be when you're getting locked up in the back of that police van. With those words, Assalamu alaikum.